Hey homestead peeps! So what are 5 vintage homesteading skills that you can learn this year? Hey homestead peeps! So I apologize for where I am filming this video today, but I have messed around today and let my battery die on my phone, so I had to go somewhere where I could be plugged up. Hope everybody's having a great day today. I have to apologize for where I'm doing my video today. I have messed around and let my battery almost die, so I wouldn't be able to make my video outside like I normally like to. So I had to find a place to plug up so we could charge while we made the video. But I wanted to get this out there to you guys today. So 5 vintage homesteading skills that you can learn this year. What are 5 of the skills that back in the day, not just homesteading but homemaking, just the average home, these are 5 things that they did on an everyday, a normal basis, that they didn't think odd, that we probably should bring back again. The first one is gardening. And I know a lot of you, if you're watching this video, you're probably already interested in gardening, or you have a garden, or you've, in the middle of gardening, whatever. But decades ago, that was actually a common thing to have a garden. Houses had larger lots. Even houses in town had larger lots, and almost every house had some sort of garden. Now, most houses probably didn't garden and were fully sustainable. They didn't completely rely on those gardens for food, but they were a huge part of the supplemented diet of the family in that day. So gardening actually is a skill, and gardening, if the Pilgrims hadn't understood how to garden, how to grow things, they probably wouldn't survived their first year here. So it's an important skill, and something that we need to bring back. Fresh produce can be expensive, so gardening is sort of a way to supplement that expense. And I think gardening is making a comeback these days, probably because of all the things going on in the world. But even if you don't have a large area to garden in, I would suggest starting small, starting something. Plant a couple of herbs in a pot. Do something on your back porch, because every little bit counts and it takes time. You're not going to start growing acres and acres of food overnight. So it's a skill that needs to be learned. So I suggest starting with small pots if you don't have an area to start with. So number 1 is gardening. Number 2 is the skill of preserving food. So that sort of goes along with the gardening. So back in the day, preserving became a way of not wasting the food that had been harvested. And so some ways of preserving food can be canning, can be dehydrating, that kind of thing. But even if you don't have a garden, you can still preserve food. We can preserve produce from the farmer's market, from the grocery store. We can pick, there's a lot around our area, there's a lot of those you pick blueberries, or you pick strawberries, or you pick, peaches, a lot of orchards and things like that. So that's a good way to get fresh foods that we can preserve. And friends sharing, different things with you. I may grow a lot of one thing. I'm actually starting to have sort of an abundance of banana peppers and thinking about sharing that with some people. And you know, I've had people share with me some things, so that's a great way of being able to preserve food as well. And even freezer items in the grocery store. And I'm actually planning on doing that this weekend, because in the event that we lose electricity for an extended amount of time, those items in my freezer are going to go bad. But if I preserve them by canning them or dehydrating them, they don't require electricity to keep them good. So that's probably one of the most important homemaking skills or homesteading skills. And please understand that a lot of the practices, especially canning, has changed over the years. So if you're looking back at some vintage recipes or some vintage canning things, make sure that you get up-to-date information, because a lot of it has changed, and a lot of those ways of preserving back in the day may not have been the safest methods to use. So make sure you're using up-to-date information. Skill number 3 is cooking from scratch. So vintage homemakers didn't have the luxury of the box mixes and the pre-made meals and that sort of thing back in the day, and they cooked everything from scratch. So, but in the same aspect, their dinners were a lot simpler than they are today. Sometimes beans and cornbread would be dinner, but when you transition from cooking to cooking everything from scratch, you don't want to start, you know, just go hog wild, so to speak, and do everything at one time. Start by eliminating those instant mixes, or those, you know, the boxed things, the boxed dinners and stuff. Start by eliminating that, and then you can work your way up to things like baking your own bread, making your own mayonnaise, making your own butter, those kinds of things eventually. So just start small and take it and realize that it's a process and that you'll get there eventually. So that was number 3, cooking from scratch. Number 4 is planning ahead. So certainly if you're not going to have an instant meal or a boxed meal, you're not going to be able to just make it in, 15 minutes. So cooking from scratch is going to take some planning ahead. So not only that, if you're gardening, you need to plan, you need to always be a season or more ahead of what you plan to plant once this crop is done. What are you going to do next? Be ready for that, so you don't waste time and lose time in your gardening. So basically, thinking of this planning ahead in terms of like managing, you're just basically managing your household. You need to think in terms of planning for your livestock as well, for feeding them as well as for processing them, and how many you want to keep for reproduction, whether it's seeds or whether it's fertilized eggs or what have you. Those are some more things that you need to think about planning ahead of. So yes, it's like sort of just like managing your household. That's one skill that needs to be looked at. Obviously, you're also going to have to plan meals ahead of time, maybe a week or so out, so you can make a grocery list and know the things that you're going to need, because you're not going to run to the store and get that instant box mix again. So there's a lot of bread making recipes that are, quite extensive, but then there's also some that are real easy to make, just, with flour and active dry yeast and some, whatever other items. But it's like, try different recipes out. See what works best for you. See what fits into your schedule best and what your family likes to eat the best. So planning ahead is skill number 4. Also, sewing. Now, this is probably one art that has been put to the wayside the most. And I'm not talking about sewing decorative pillows and sewing, pretty curtains. I'm talking about functional sewing, like mending or patching pants, or mending holes in a shirt or a pair of socks or something like this. These are skills that are definitely important, and especially in vintage days, in the old-fashioned days, you didn't just run out, and I'm got a hole in this shirt, I'll go run and get another one. One, because people didn't have the money to do that, and two, you just didn't run to the store. Usually they didn't have transportation to get there that quickly, so it was a big ordeal. And a lot of people even sewed their own clothing, put their own clothing together, dresses and shirts and pants and things like that. So sewing is a great vintage skill to have for the homestead. And here's you a bonus. Soap making. Think about soap making. I haven't learned how to do soap making personally, but it is definitely on my list of something to learn to do. Not only is it just nice to know what's in your soap that you're putting on your skin, but it also makes a great way to make some custom gifts for friends and family, and it also could be a productive side gig if you really get into it and you enjoy the soap making. So that's another vintage skill that a lot of families used back in the day that has kind of gone to the wayside. So thinking about vintage versus modern homesteading, and of course things are different today, but don't forget there are still ways that we can cook from scratch by taking advantage of some of the appliances we have today, like crock pots or the Instapot and those kinds of things. So I'm not saying don't use those, just cook, good wholesome food instead of those things that are packed with preservatives and MSGs and all kinds of things like that. So, and salt. There's a lot of extra salt and a lot of unnecessary sugar in a lot of those prepackaged things. And today a lot of the women work outside of the home, which puts a extra difficulty on being able to plan and cook and long term and those kinds of things. But these are old-fashioned homemaking skills, and they're not things that we can expect everyone to know or do on a regular basis. But if you're feeling the need to look a little inward and put out your sails a little and try something new, these are some great homemaking skills that could be also some great survival skills, or just some things that you can pass along to your next generation and to your family and your children, because these are some things that our country was thrived on because of their knowledge and their ability to be able to do some of these things. So I hope you got something from this today, that you got value from this. If you did, be sure to comment below. What are some of the things that you're doing, that you're working on, skills that you're working on the homestead that you didn't know how to do previously before you started homesteading maybe? Or let me know some of the things that you would like to hear more about, perhaps maybe the soap making, or making your own mayonnaise, or making your own bread, or those kinds of things. So we can do some more videos on that. So I just want to encourage you, and remember, do your best and then let God do the rest.